260 men caught in 10 undercover operations in 7 different states. Good evening and welcome to Dateline. I'm Stone Phillips.
And I'm Ann Curry. But now, for the first time, you're about to learn what was happening behind the scenes.
Tonight, we take you inside these investigations, from the team who tracks the suspects to the man who faces them, Chris Hansen. You'll hear their stories in their own words. Some of it is explicit. So what is it like to catch a predator?
What were you doing with your pants there when you were heading towards the door?
My zipper came down, excuse me.
We've been doing these investigations for almost 3 years now, and I've interviewed more than 200 potential sex predators.
Ain't nothing going on here, dude.
And these guys come from all walks of life and all age groups.
How can a 13-year-old boy be fit to have sex with a 65-year-old man? Don't you see an issue there?
Well, I see nothing wrong with cuddling and caressing.
But in the beginning, I had no idea of what to expect. I can still remember the first day of the first investigation.
I had heard about Perverted Justice. I had heard about their work in the chat rooms, posing as 12, 13, 14-year-old kids. But I honestly wondered if anybody would show up.
And the IMs start popping up.
The producer and Chris kept asking, are you sure people are going to show up? You sure this isn't a waste of time? And, of course, people showed up.
When this first guy was walking up the driveway and it became clear that he was actually going to come in the house, my heart's almost beating out of my chest. But with each guy who came in, I got a little better at asking the right questions.
Hey, how you doing?
All right.
Did you have a seat?
Mm-hmm. I knew.
You knew what?
Exactly what's going on.
Just take your hands out of your pockets. Oh, you don't have to put them up.
Okay, no problem.
I wondered, quite honestly, whether or not everybody would just see me and run. Not because they knew I was Chris Hansen with Dateline NBC, but, whether it was the father who came home unexpectedly, or was it the police?
I know what's going on. I'm not stupid.
It turned out most of the guys stayed and chatted.
So you were obviously suspicious in the beginning.
Of course I am. I'm always suspicious.
Always? Do you do this a lot?
No, this is the first time I've actually did show up to see what was going on.
And you expect me to believe that?
Yes, I do.
Do you have children?
Yes, I do.
And how would you feel if one of your children was 13 or 14 years old, that child was home alone, chatting with somebody on the internet who ultimately came over with no parent at home? How would you feel about that as a parent?
I'd be pretty pissed off.
During that first day of that first investigation, we had something like 8 guys come in. And it was difficult to keep up because I didn't have it down to a system then. And I'd go to confront him, and I'd say,
You came here for Rachel?
No.
Jocelyn?
No.
Lori?
No.
Turned out it was the wrong transcript. I had to go back to the dining room and get the right transcript.
It was for Beth?
Yes.
And say, oh, you were here for the 14-year-old girl. Goes, oh, yeah, that was me. And continue on from there.
Hey, is this John?
That was the first decoy we ever used in To Catch a Predator. When I had joined Perverted Justice, I had come on board as a contributor in February of 2004. And about a week later, I got a phone call from Frag saying, hey, could you come up to New York this weekend? And I showed up to the house, and the producer took one look at me and said, so you'll also be the physical decoy for this operation? And I said, yeah, sure.
Just come on in and sit at the counter. I gotta finish getting dressed.
So suddenly I was playing male and female and ages 10 to 15 and every ethnicity in between.
Okay, listen, just say something to me.
What do you want me to say?
I say, Rachel, you're 19 years old, right?
I'm not, though. You know I'm not.
I don't know that.
Eddie was a classic. When Eddie shows up, he has this long, tense, drawn-out conversation between Dell, posing as the teenage girl, who's standing next to me.
And I'm looking at Chris like, what do I do? And Chris, tells me spin it out a little bit, does a little hand motion.
I told you I was 14. You saw it, you said it back to me. What are you talking about?
No. Not as far as I know. As far as I know, you're 19 years old, right?
But
Rachel, can you read between the lines?
And finally Chris was like, which is apparently the universal sign for go ahead and tell him. So I said,
can you just say that?
Yes, I'm 19 years old.
Okay.
So finally he comes in, and then I approach.
My intentions are not anything, so I just want to protect myself, that's all.
But she told you on the internet she was 14.
19, she wrote me after that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what
On the internet?
Yes.
You want to stick with that story?
That's what I thought she wrote.
You want to see the transcript?
I'm sure you have it.
He tells me he's a television producer, and at that moment, it was kind of a breakthrough for me because, you're always walking a fine line. You want to be serious. It's a very serious topic, but you can also be clever about the way you ask the questions.
Where are you a television producer?
I work independently right now.
Yeah. It's ironic because I work in television too, with Dateline NBC.
Okay. I don't get permission.
And right there was a flicker in his eye when he realized what he was in for.
I haven't done anything wrong at all. If you go into the transcripts, time and time again, everything that was said.
Picture this.
Everything.
Picture this. You lying back, eyes straddle your chest. It sounds like you were looking to have a sexual experience with this girl, Rachel, who we were talking to on the internet. I mean, I don't know what other conclusion you can draw.
You can search me for a condom. I don't have one on me. I wouldn't have sex without one. Besides, she's supposedly a virgin, so she's never had sex anyway, so I certainly wouldn't want to be the first.
Kind of sounds like you might have been excited about the fact that she was a virgin in here.
No, I don't think so. You don't see that in there. And in fact, all you see is just little test scenarios.
He then tells me that he thinks it's great what we're doing.
I'm very interested in your story. I think it's a great thing that you're doing. I think it's something that you should certainly do more and more and bag people left and right.
This is real time.
This is real time. This is happening right now.
Save as.
Very first sting was quite an experience. It was a lot different than they are anymore. Dell and I were stuck in the corner of a stairwell.
This is what a 13-year-old girl looks like at Perverted Justice.
At the house, we went from Frag and I being perched on a single desk in a hallway at the top of a staircase. So if I rolled sideways, I was going down, to having an entire room set aside where we've got our webcams up and we've got our phone verifiers in position and we've got all these new technologies that we're using. And Frag's gone from having a hallway window to look out of.
It's just a matter of getting in the door.
To having something like 7 monitors pyramided around him.
It was quite exhilarating that it worked out and that they showed up and that, we got to expose it on national TV.
You can't put me on TV.
Coming up next, suspect after suspect after suspect, and surprise after surprise after surprise.
So you just woke up this morning and said, I'm going to get involved in an internet conversation with a 14-year-old boy, go to his house, strip naked, and walk in.
When To Catch a Predator continues.
Every time I think that I've seen it all, something else happens. When a guy walks into this house naked, nobody ever taught me in journalism school that you had to put a towel or a blanket nearby to hand to a naked man so he could cover up so you could interview him. Could you explain yourself?
I'm sorry.
Why don't you go ahead and cover up?
Certainly. I'm sorry.
What kind of conduct is this?
Sir, I've never done this before.
So you just woke up this morning and said, I'm going to get involved in an internet conversation with a 14-year-old boy. I'm going to go to his house, strip naked, and walk in with a 12-pack of beer.
No, sir.
What would have happened, John, if I wasn't here?
I probably would have chickened out, sir.
But when that same guy surfaces in a chat room the very next day and agrees to meet another young boy at a fast food restaurant, and we confront him again, it was hard for me to assemble the words to approach him. I have been in television for 24 years.
I just came to get something to eat.
And I have very seldom been at a loss for words.
Sir, I just came to get something to eat.
But I don't even know what to ask you first.
We're in Fort Myers. It's late at night on a Saturday. And we're expecting this guy to show up.
That's him right there. He's pulling in the driveway.
Who has had a conversation with a decoy. He wants her to do this bizarre sex act involving a cat and Cool Whip. She says she'll consider it if he'll strip naked when he walks in the house.
I'm gonna find my cat quick, okay? Just strip in there and I'll be out with the cat.
But you never really think somebody's going to do this. But sure enough, there he is. And this guy is moving so quickly, naked.
Where are you?
Wait, just take a seat. Have
He's got his hand on the door at the same time I've got my hand on the door, and as I open it up, I don't know who is more shocked, me or him. You want to explain yourself? Grab that towel right there, please. Wrap it around yourself, and please sit in that stool. What are you doing?
Making a mistake.
Making a mistake. I mean, I can only imagine what would have been going on in this house had I not been here. Am I wrong to think that?
No, you're not.
So what's going to be happening if I'm not here? You're naked, there's a 14-year-old girl, you're chasing a cat around, you've got Cool Whip, and you want this girl to do some sex act with the cat, and then you'll have sex with her. Is that accurate? Yes. And I start going through the chat log with him, and he thinks it's funny, and I think it's somewhat nervous laughter. So it's funny.
No, I'm just thinking it to myself that this would never happen again. This is something, no. It's not right.
So you're promising me right now that you'll never...
I'm promising myself that I'm not...
Hook up with a 14-year-old girl online, tell her to have sex with a cat, and walk into her house naked.
Not even under 19. I'm promising that to myself, not even to you, this is not good.
Would you ever think that would have happened before seeing one of these investigations? I wouldn't.
In the very first operation we did with Dateline in Long Island, the most memorable person that I was chatting with happened to be a person who turned out to be a New York City firefighter, Ryan Hogan.
Yeah, it's obscene. It's obscene.
The interesting thing about Hogan was that for a while he was just about off the hook. He drove by the house, and he got scared to come in because there was a Nassau County Sheriff's car parked next door at this real estate office. At the time, we weren't working with law enforcement. That just happened to be that there was a marked unit next door, unrelated.
Then he gets back on the computer, turns on his webcam, and masturbates in front of somebody, posing as a young teenage girl. That's what got him into trouble. Since he never came into the house, I tracked him down outside the firehouse where he worked.
Is this appropriate behavior for a New York City firefighter?
No, sir, it is not.
For any adult to have this kind of a conversation with somebody who says they're a 14-year-old girl home alone?
No, sir, it is not.
Then what are you doing, Ryan?
I made a mistake at the time. I made the judgment call to correct that mistake.
Is there anything else you want to say about this?
Yeah, I think people got to use their heads. People should know better. I made a mistake.
He was charged and convicted in federal court because of him getting back on, getting comfortable, and exposing himself to who he believed was a child.
Hey, you made it. Come on back.
Thanks. How are you?
Good, how are you?
We're set up in Petaluma, in a very nice neighborhood. This 48-year-old doctor named Maurice Wolin had been chatting online with a decoy posing as a 13-year-old girl. So he comes in and he's clearly nervous, but there's a bit of a conversation between the actress portraying the young teen and the doctor. And my gut was this was going to be one of those situations where the chat would continue between the actress and the doctor, and I would come out and he would probably be one of those guys to stay and talk to me.
Pour me a drink. I'm actually going to put on my suit so maybe we can get in the hot tub because it's all warm.
But as he's standing at the bar, you can tell he's nervous. He goes to pour himself a drink.
Oh, jeez.
And it comes out in a big clump, and it spills all over the place, and now he's all flustered. So he's looking for something to wipe up the mess.
Do you have a towel?
So by this point, the actress is around the corner, standing next to me, next to the sound man, next to the cameraman. Dr. Wolin comes around the corner and sees the sound man, and there's eye contact there.
I gotta take off. Sir?
And he freaks a bit. And I start to come out. I said, excuse me, I just would like to talk to you for a minute.
I need to talk to you for a minute.
He hot-foots it through the garage, and of course he's met by Petaluma police. And he knows that he's in trouble.
Oh,
Yes! Get on the ground! On the ground!
I wasn't gonna do it!
Get on the ground! Get on the ground!
Get his keys.
I wasn't doing anything. Oh man, I wasn't doing anything.
Get his keys.
I wasn't doing anything.
He talks, says he doesn't want to talk some more.
You're in some trouble, obviously.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in big trouble, and I feel like I made maybe a mistake, but I didn't do anything.
Gets on the phone, calls his wife.
Honey, I'm in big trouble. I'll explain. You have to bail me out of the Sonoma County Jail. $30,000 check we'll need. It was a sting operation. I'll explain it to you when you're here. Don't bring the girls. I didn't do anything, but I did something stupid.
Probably the most unsettling thing that I've seen, and we've seen a lot of unsettling things in these investigations, but when we were wrapping up our investigation, it was towards the end of the investigation in Fort Myers, Florida, a man showed up for a sexual encounter with a 14-year-old boy, and we're watching on the monitors.
He's getting out of the car.
He gets out, he goes to the passenger side rear door.
Oh, no.
Oh, my God. He brought his son with him. He's got his child with him.
And leads him by the hand as if he were taking him to the zoo.
Coming in the back door.
And walks in to meet this teenage boy with his son. The house was silent. I mean, there were guys in tears seeing this. And, you know, gosh, I don't want to necessarily confront this guy in front of his 5-year-old kid. I don't want to traumatize him further.
I got to tell you something, and I'm going to tell you just straight up right now. I'm Chris Hansen with Dateline NBC.
Good.
We're doing a story on adults meeting children, and since you have your child here, I'm not going to pursue this.
Okay.
But I think you know what you were doing here, don't you?
No, I was just coming to take somebody for lunch.
My point is, because your child is here, I think it'd be best if you just went ahead and left.
Yeah, I agree. I'm never going to do this again.
And he walks out in the scene of police arresting him.
Sir, right there. You come here. You come here. Let go of the child.
And sweeping this 5-year-old boy off his feet. It was tough to watch. It was very tough to watch.
Coming up, what viewers want to know, we answer questions from you.
One of the questions that we get asked more than any other question is, why don't you guys bust women?
When To Catch a Predator continues.
Viewers are always asking if I ever feel I'm in danger.
There he is. He's right there, Stegman.
We've had guys who talk in their chats about how they never go anywhere without a gun. That makes me nervous.
Get on the ground!
The police arrested the guy before he came into the house. And in fact, we found out later that the guy had a shotgun in his car. And we find out that he was a Marine sniper at one point.
I didn't listen to my sixth sense that kept me alive in Iraq, and I didn't do that here.
Did you have any guns in the car?
Yes, I did. I have my shotgun. It pretty much goes anywhere with me.
I think the most well-known, the most remembered person to surface in one of these investigations is Rabbi David Kay.
Hello?
Hi.
Hey, hold on a second. I gotta change my shirt, okay?
Okay.
So how can I help you? What are you doing here?
Not something good. This isn't good.
Not good. I think that's kind of an understatement, isn't it? You sent pornographic pictures. That's a federal offense right there.
Okay, look. You know I'm in trouble, and I know I'm in trouble. I am not interested in getting any further in trouble.
The rabbi has sent a couple of pictures of himself naked, one of him engaging in oral sex with another man.
I am Chris Hansen with Dateline NBC, and we're doing a story on computer predators.
No, come on.
And he is coming at me because he wants it. He's not even thinking that, you know, we could have 1 million copies of it already.
You don't want to touch it. You don't want it.
You've got to stop this.
Sit down.
It's at that point that Ron Knight, our security man, steps in, and he leaves. That was tense, but at the moment, I really didn't think I was, you know, facing, you know, any great danger. Flagler Beach, Florida. Part of me thinks we dodged a bullet. This is one of those nights where everybody was pretty tired.
If he was serious, that he'd be here, you know.
So about 9:30 at night, we broke down. And of course, about 5 minutes after we get back to the hotel, cell phones are going off. So we scramble back into position. And somewhere in this time period, you know, we get an indication he might be a police officer, which means he might be carrying a weapon, which means it's a better idea to have the police make a traffic stop, and we can get the crews there very quickly afterwards. So the police stop him, and he identifies himself as a law enforcement officer. They search him. They find a .38 caliber pistol in his pocket. In his car, they find an assault rifle, a shotgun, and another handgun, hundreds of rounds of ammunition, bulletproof vests, a still camera, and a video camera, among assorted other items. I realized at that moment that I could have been standing there in this house confronting a man who had a loaded gun in his pocket. I wonder what this guy would have done had there really been a young teenage girl home alone. What was he going to do with the video camera, the still camera? Who knows what would have happened to a young girl? I wonder also what would have happened had there been a confrontation. How does he react? That's why we try to take all the precautions we can. He later pleaded not guilty. His lawyer told us he always carries those weapons because he's a police officer. We've gotten hundreds of emails from viewers asking, is this entrapment?
Okay, open up the door.
Hi, how you doing?
Entrapment is when a person who would normally not commit a crime commits the crime because of police misconduct. In this situation, there was no police misconduct. There was no police conduct which caused these people to come to the place to try to have sex with a minor. So that's not entrapment.
4:00 p.m. is Gear Jammer.
How can it be entrapment when you set up a profile, you present it with no illicit things about it, strictly innocence, and they contact you? And they are the ones that begin talking about wanting to have sexual encounters with you. They initiated it. Because they get caught once they've initiated it is not an entrapment issue.
We've done 10 investigations now, and we've never caught a woman.
I gotta throw my clothes in the wash, okay?
One of the questions that we get asked more than any other question is, why don't you guys bust women? And it's not for lack of trying. It's not like we're out there, you know, just with girls. We've got boys out there. We've got everything. But women just generally aren't internet predators. In terms of just a woman of her own accord hitting on one of our kids, we just haven't had it happen.
The closest we've ever come to catching a woman was in Georgia. She told a perverted justice decoy she was going to come with her boyfriend for group sex. The woman chatted on the phone with a decoy named Aaron.
Phil, how are you? This is Aaron.
And we're like, oh, there is a woman. And she had this conversation, and she was going to come with Marvin. Marvin ended up showing for the girl, but the woman, Phyllis, didn't come. And the police, I believe, are actually still trying to figure out whether or not they're going to arrest her or not.
The man has pleaded not guilty and is awaiting trial. And a lot of people ask us why we keep doing these investigations.
I feel like a dumbass, couldn't find your house.
I think we're covering a continuing story. This problem isn't going away. You know, we've done 10 investigations so far, and I'll bet you that we could walk into virtually any town in America and do it again.
I gotta finish getting changed, okay?
Well, watch it.
When we catch somebody who has committed a sexual assault in the past, especially when you're talking about the sexual assault of a child, to me, I think that's satisfying to expose somebody like that. So let me get this straight. You were accused of doing the very same thing that you're out doing tonight.
I had no intention of this.
In the one case in Ohio, Kevin Westerbeck, I mean, there was a frustrated detective chasing this case for a couple years where he sexually assaulted a young female relative who had sought his company in the middle of the night because she was afraid as a thunderstorm was coming in.
She was staying with him for the weekend that he had improperly touched her in a way that would amount to rape under Ohio law.
And it wasn't until Westerbeck surfaces in our investigation that he ultimately pleads guilty in this earlier case.
Did you want to be the cop or the robber?
Oh, I don't care.
Thomas Bodner, some 20 years ago it turns out, he sexually assaulted 3 children in one family.
Wait, whoa.
And here he is in our hidden camera house. He's running. And he makes a run for it, and the police arrest him.
What'd you do your time for? What were you charged with?
I'd rather not say right there.
Well, I'll find out. I just got to look. I know you were charged. I know you were arrested up in Oregon.
Yeah.
And that's why you're 290 registered. Yeah. For molesting a child up there.
And we tracked one of the victims down who lived in Alaska. And she tells, a heartbreaking story about what happened to her and her two brothers.
I would wake up out of a dead sleep to him French kissing me and touching my privates. It was a devastation to all of us. We still suffer from what he did to us. He got my brother Ed the worst. He's mentally challenged. So I think that he had the worst of the sexual abuse. And I was in the middle, and then my youngest brother got the less of the sexual abuse.
It turns out that after serving prison time in that case, he was caught again. Santa Barbara, California, charged with the sexual assault, goes back to prison. And then here he is out again, here to meet someone who he thought was a young teenage boy. He's pleaded not guilty, and he's waiting for his day in court.
Bodner case involves a possible sentence of 25 years to life because it's a 3 strikes case. We intend to seek that sentence. What that means is he will take his last breath in prison.
When we return, more predator suspects arrested and charged. But what happened in court?
How do you plead to the indictment?
Guilty, Your Honor.
When To Catch a Predator continues.
Sheriff's office, put your hands up!
Of the more than 200 men charged in our investigations, not one man has been let off. In every case, the man has either pleaded guilty, been convicted at trial, or his case is still pending.
I gotta ask, you still gonna be up for tonight?
We'll see.
So how can I help you?
Rabbi David Kay. He was indicted.
Now, presumably, you counsel families and children in your position as a rabbi. What are you doing as a man of God, as a rabbi, in this house, trying to meet a 13-year-old boy?
He requests a bench trial in federal court. In other words, no jury. He just goes before a federal judge. He's convicted, sentenced to 6.5 years in federal prison, partly because the judge said the rabbi lied when he testified in his own defense, that he really didn't think there was a 13-year-old boy home alone.
Sheriff's office, let me see your hands. Get on the ground! Get down!
In Greenville, Ohio,
You have the right to remain silent.
You understand that right?
Yes.
18 of the men were arrested. Out of those 18, 17 have already been to court and found guilty, but 2 of them went to trial.
I'm gonna go and get ready. I'll be upstairs in the first bedroom, okay?
Okay.
With Rob Klein, when we were at trial with him, his main issue was, hey, I drove there, I even stopped down at the church and tried to debate whether I should come to the house or not.
I was actually just going to stop by here to let her know that I wasn't going to be here because I have to go meet with other people.
Wait a minute. You came by here to tell her that you weren't going to come here.
Mm-hmm.
The jury just felt that, you know, if you were really thinking about abandoning it from the church, you would have gone home. 16 men out of the 18 have been sentenced.
Why don't you just tell me what you do for a living?
I'm a teacher.
And what grade do you teach?
6th grade.
6th grade.
The 17th one,
How do you plead to the indictment as amended?
Guilty, Your Honor.
but is still to be sentenced sometime in April.
Go ahead and be seated.
Sentencing on these 16 men have ranged anywhere from 30 days in the local jail to 11 months in prison.
You say, would you get naked? I just don't want to get cold, she says. You say, have sex? Now, a moment ago, you told me this wasn't a sexually oriented conversation.
I was just talking.
Just talking.
In Kevin Westerbeck's case, he was given 11 months. In another county right next to us, he had received a 10-year sentence for actually rape.
You are classified as a sexual predator.
When the judge sentenced him in ours, he took his sentence and he ran it concurrent. I was mad. Why did our sentence run concurrent? You know, why didn't it run consecutive? Why should this guy be turned back out? Why is just 11 years enough? Why shouldn't it be 12?
Hands up. Keep walking.
Just relax. Anything sharp in your pockets?
No, sir.
In Riverside County, California, there were 51 men arrested.
They were all charged. They're all being prosecuted.
Oh, God.
With the exception of 17 who have pled guilty. We didn't offer any plea bargains to any of these individuals, no deals whatsoever. The two longest sentences, one was given to Daniel Allen.
You visited people who you met online who said they were 13 before?
Well, yeah, 13 or 15.
So it's not the first time you've done this?
Well, no, wait a minute.
And the other one was given to Hoi Chan. They were both 3 years in state prison. They got the longest sentences because the judges in their case realized the incredible harm that could have occurred. And so they got the sentences that they deserved. Quite frankly, all of them deserved those sentences.
I knew it. I knew it was a setup.
No, I need you to sit down, please.
I need you to just arrest me and take me to jail and execute me.
I need to talk to you first.
Because you know what? I didn't bring anything. I didn't want to do anything.
Well, why did you come here, though? Help me to understand.
Because I'm a sick son of a bitch. I've never done it before. I talk about it online all the time. I've never done anything with anybody except my wife. Ever.
The Walter Bapps case involves a teacher from Corona who pled straight up at trial.
I would like to speak with an attorney and have him present.
Well, he decided to plead, throw himself on the mercy of the court. He's pending sentencing. That's coming up in April. There's the Homeland Security agent. I think that case will go to trial.
My father was a police officer. I was a police officer. I work for the Department of Homeland Security. Okay. I understand you guys have a job to do, and I'm not trying to tell you anything else other than that. I swear to God, as God is my witness, I'm wearing a St. Michael's medal right now. Okay? I was not going to do anything with her.
Every cop in this country, you put a bad mark on him.
I know, sir.
And there are other cases that may go to trial as well. What they're going to argue, I have no idea. I would imagine that they're going to talk about entrapment. But once people see those communications, those written communications between the defendant and what appeared to them to be an underage child, and then they see the interviews done by Dateline, I can't imagine anybody being successful at trial.
Oh my God! Put your hands up! No! Put your hands up! You're on your knees now! Hands up in here.
In Long Beach, California, 35 men were arrested.
Long Beach, please put your hands up. Stop right there. Please, stop your bike. Get on your knees. Get on your knees.
18 so far have pled guilty, and the remaining 17 are still fighting it out in court. Our standard offer on the case was essentially 18 months in state prison. None of the defendants have accepted our offer of state prison. They have fallen on the mercy of the court, and in those cases that have pled out, basically the judges have given them a probationary sentence.
A lot of these guys are getting straight probation and no time, but they are having to register sex offenders, which is a good thing.
I can't demand a judge to give a guy state prison. I can only ask for it. That's their role to determine what the sentence should be.
Get down on the ground! Get on the ground! Get down on the ground! Down! Get on the ground! Get down on the ground!
20 people actually showed up in Harris County to meet with a person they thought to be 15 or younger.
All right, good afternoon. I'm Judge Webb of the Harris County Magistrate Court.
Out of those 20, at this point to date, we've had 14 go to court and plead guilty in our Superior Court of Georgia to criminal acts. The sentences range anywhere from 10 years with 2 years to serve, with the remaining 8 years being on probation, all the way up to 6 years to serve, with 25 years being put on probation.
I don't want you to destroy my life.
Well, you made the decision to walk in here.
I know, sir, but I wasn't going to do anything, I swear.
That's not what it sounds like in this chat log.
Yes, I was just fooling around, sir.
Damn, you're very sexy. You have a boyfriend?
I know, sir. Sorry. Sorry, please.
So you ever been with an old guy before? No, I need you to stay in the chair, please. Sit down, please.
Please, sir.
Mr. Resticruz, he was the military member. He actually got 5 years, the balance of 25 years on probation. I would like to think Georgia has been tougher in sentencing than most states because we're looking out for our kids. We're very conservative in the South. We put a big value on family. For that reason, we're looking out for our children.
Coming up, how our investigations took on a life of their own.
Hi, fella. Who are you? I'm Chris Hansen from Dateline. Can I ask what the heck you were doing coming to see a 12-year-old girl in the middle of the night?
When To Catch a Predator continues.
My next guest is a correspondent
a hugely popular series on Dateline NBC. Please welcome Chris Hansen.
When we began our investigations into online sexual predators, we knew it was an important story, and we knew it would be eye-opening. We knew people would say, oh my gosh, this is really going on. But I had no idea that this thing would resonate with people the way it has.
He catches online sexual predators with their pants down.
Once I appeared on Oprah,
You're about to see why I'm a big fan of Dateline NBC's Chris Hansen.
that changed everything.
I think you're doing amazing work. You and NBC.
We're talking about a woman here who herself was victimized by sexual abuse. And so when she gets on board, it makes a real difference.
Don't understand why the guys sit down and talk to you.
Well,
I don't know why they don't just walk out the door. Why do they sit down and talk to you?
It amazes me sometimes. I mean, it's gotten to the point where it's almost like, oh, you're that guy, this is that show, oh, you want me to sit over here?
Yeah.
When she weighs in on something, she's got a loyal, educated viewing audience that pays attention. And it makes a difference.
I urge every parent in America to tune in.
I was invited to testify in front of a congressional subcommittee in Washington.
I want to thank our first panel witness, Mr. Chris Hansen, for testifying today about his riveting investigative series called To Catch a Predator.
I think they found it eye-opening. I'd like to say that we've had an impact, and I believe, ultimately, it will strengthen laws governing this sort of activity on the Internet.
Being on Oprah and testifying before Congress has brought a lot of awareness to the issue, and so have all the spoofs that have been done.
Hello? We got a call from the Conan O'Brien folks proposing to be a part of a skit for the opening of the Emmy Awards.
I'm Chris Hansen with Dateline NBC. Oh, God. Okay, now what you think?
Welcome to another edition of To Catch a Predator.
I'm looking for the Emmys. I'm hosting.
Hosting? That's what you call it.
Yeah, it's my second time.
So you've done this before?
Yeah, no, I did it one time and I liked it and I thought I should do it again.
Of all the predators I've met, this guy, screen name Conebone69, is by far the creepiest.
This is kind of, you think it's very easy to explain.
Explain it then.
Okay.
I think it was funny in a way. We didn't show any disrespect for law enforcement or for people who've been victimized by this crime. There have been spoofs on Saturday Night Live, Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip.
Hi, fella. Who are you? I'm Chris Hansen from Dateline. Can I ask what the heck you were doing coming to see a 12-year-old girl in the middle of the night?
Let's say you meet someone on MySpace and want to arrange to meet them in person. Okay. Like maybe you're going to meet them at their house.
What's your question?
What's the best way to make sure that Dateline's not going to be there?
I got a call from the folks at 30 Rock asking me to do a cameo appearance as myself.
Should I grab a plate?
Essentially, the main character's boyfriend goes into the kitchen to get something to eat, and Tina Fey is flipping through the channels, and To Catch a Predator comes on. And there's the boyfriend walking into the house with balloons.
Good evening, sir. I'm Chris Hansen with Dateline NBC. Can I ask you what you're doing here tonight?
Oh, yeah, I'm here to boff some chick named Mary.
Boff some.
Oh my
Yeah.
God!
And do you know how old Mary is?
Like 22, I think.
Holy
crap. That girl said she was 16, but I swear to God I could tell she was 22.
Get out!
She's 13 years of age.
It's amazing to me when you go to YouTube and some of these other sites where people post these videos that they make, how many parodies are out there. They take a lot of time to create, and some of them are pretty darn clever.
Did you bring any wine with you, or did you bring condoms?
Hi there.
Whoa, scared me.
Chris Hansen, Dateline NBC. Why don't you have a seat?
Come on, Dad, I know who you are.
I need you to have a seat. Come on. Right there. What are you doing here?
I live here?
Oh, you live here? I don't even know Chris Hansen. Are you Chris Hansen? No, who's Hansen? Who has papers here? I have the papers.
That's it, I'm on.
Now, wait a minute. Sit down.
Where are you at?
There are people who have taken issue with what we do. Perhaps we should expose the problem as much as we have or in the manner we have. But the vast majority of people who stop me to talk about the story thank me.
Coming up, the families of the men caught in sex crime investigations. What happens to them?
The toughest thing I had to do was to tell my children about the arrest.
When To Catch a Predator continues.
The toughest thing I had to do was to tell my children initially about the arrest.
I decided to write a book because I felt there were aspects of this crime that could be better explored in a book form. What happens to the wives and the children of these predators once they're caught?
So how did you find out?
After I met Darlene Calvin on the Oprah Winfrey Show, I knew that she had to be in the book.
The actual charge had to do with traveling with the intent to have sex with minor boys.
It turns out that her ex-husband was secretly a member of NAMBLA, the North American Man-Boy Love Association.
When I see Chris doing one of his To Catch a Predator shows.
Who did you think you were going to meet here?
Just this kid I've been talking to.
This kid?
My first thought is, wow, somebody is going to have to go tell his wife. I know what that feels like, and it hurts, and it stinks.
No, I need you to sit down, please.
I need you to just arrest me and take me to jail and execute me.
I need to talk to you first.
Nobody really thinks about the predator's wife or the predator's children, the predator's best friend, the predator's next door neighbor. And these are all people who have been betrayed. And these are all individuals who have to go through their own shock and grief and anger and regrouping and moving on.
It will be the judgment order of this court that the defendant be sentenced to the midterm of 3 years in state prison.
As we've seen in our investigations, there is a wide range of opinion when it comes to sentencing and treatment for sex offenders. I met a man named Bob Schilling who has one of the most unique points of view when it comes to this issue.
I spent 4 years of my life being sexually abused, and it was one of the most painful times in my life.
He later became a police officer in Seattle, and he was approached by the chief to work in the division investigating sex crimes against children. And at first, he didn't want to face what had happened to him as a kid.
Unfortunately, my mother walked in one time when it was happening, and she turned around and walked out. And that was the low point in my life, because I thought, my God, if my own mother doesn't even know how to protect me, how am I going to protect myself?
Please, God!
So I can assure you that I have no love for sex offenders. But through my years of being a law enforcement officer, I know what works. Treatment works. Making sure that these offenders have jobs, making sure that they have places to live.
But of course, not everyone agrees with him.
Counseling doesn't help at all. And this is an irresistible impulse that these individuals cannot control and have no desire to control.
I am an absolute firm believer in strict punishment, getting them treatment, and then letting them get on with their life when they come out.
Go ahead and be seated.
Knowing who they are,
How do you plead, sir?
watching them, making sure that they are held accountable, but let them get on with their life.
I have looked into the eyes of more than 200 of these guys, and I have read every word of every chat log these guys have generated, and it has given me a unique perspective on this problem, and I thought it was important to share that experience with people.
You can read an excerpt from Chris Hansen's book on our website. You'll also find a complete online safety kit with guidelines on how to protect your children from internet predators. Just log on to dateline.msnbc.com. That's all for this edition of Dateline Tuesday. I'm Ann Curry.
And I'm Stone Phillips. We'll see you again tomorrow for Dateline Wednesday at 8, 7 Central. For all of us at NBC News, good night.